You ever have a moment that feels so wrong, but so right? Like the air shifts, and suddenly you're standing on the edge of something you can't take back? A moment where the world tilts, and you're not sure if you're falling or flying? That's what happened to me when I was 19, standing in my best friend Ethan's driveway, the summer heat heavy, clinging to my skin like a second layer. The cicadas were screaming in the trees, and the streetlights cast long, lazy shadows across the pavement. His mom, Claire, was at the door, her silhouette soft against the glow of the porch light, like something out of a dream you're not sure you should be having. She wasn't supposed to be there. Ethan was gone for the weekend, off at some music festival with his girlfriend, and I'd only stopped by to grab my jacket from his room. It was a quick errand, in and out, no big deal. But there she was, her voice low, almost a whisper, cutting through the humid night like a blade. "Hey, you don't have to rush off. I could use the company tonight." My stomach dropped hard, like I'd missed a step going downstairs. Claire was 42, the kind of woman who didn't just walk into a room, she changed it. Her eyes had this quiet intensity, like she could see straight through you, past the surface, into the messy parts you didn't even show yourself. I'd always noticed her, how could I not? She wasn't just Ethan's mom, she was this presence. Warm, sharp, with a smile that carried a hint of sadness, like she was holding on to something she'd lost a long time ago. And now, she was asking me to stay. Alone. In a house that felt too quiet, too still, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I should have said no. I should have grabbed my jacket, mumbled some excuse, and bolted for the door. But there was something in her voice, soft, almost pleading, that rooted my feet to the ground. My heart was pounding, not just from nerves, but from something deeper, something I didn't want to name. It was like the world had narrowed to just the two of us, standing there in the heat, the night pressing in around us. What do you do when someone you've known forever suddenly feels like a stranger? When one sentence flips your whole world upside down? I didn't know then, but that night would haunt me for years. It wasn't just about what happened, it was about what could have happened. And that's the part that still keeps me up at night, even now, when I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every glance, every moment I could have walked away but didn't. Let me take you back to that summer, to the moment I stepped over the threshold, and into something I wasn't ready for. Because once I did, there was no going back. I met Ethan when we were 12, two scrawny kids who bonded over skateboards, sneaking into R-rated movies, and stealing extra slices of pizza when no one was looking. His house was my second home, sleepovers filled with late-night gaming, arguing over who got the top bunk, and his mom's homemade tacos that were, no lie, better than anything my own mom ever cooked. Claire was always there, part of the background but never just background noise. She was the cool mom, the one who'd let us stay up past midnight blasting music but still call us out with a raised eyebrow if we got too rowdy. She had this laugh, soft but real, like it came from somewhere deep, and a way of making you feel like you mattered. I was just Ethan's friend, one of the many kids who traipsed through her house, but she always asked about my day, my plans, like she actually cared what a gangly 12-year-old had to say. By the time I was 19, things had changed. I wasn't a kid anymore, but I wasn't quite a man either, just stuck in that weird, restless in-between where you're not sure who you're supposed to be. College was looming, this big, vague thing on the horizon, and I was spending my summer working at a hardware store, hauling paint cans and dodging grumpy customers. Most nights, I'd end up at Ethan's, playing video games or just talking about nothing. Claire was different that summer too. I don't know when I first noticed it, maybe when I caught her staring out the kitchen window, her coffee gone cold in her hands, or the way her smile didn't always reach her eyes. Ethan's dad had left when we were kids, and I knew she'd been alone for a while. Not lonely exactly, but alone. You could feel it in the way she moved through the house, like she was carrying something heavy no one else could see. There was a quietness to her, a kind of stillness that made you want to ask if she was okay, but you didn't, because it felt like crossing a line. That night, I wasn't even supposed to be there. Ethan had left for the festival, and I'd forgotten my jacket at his place the week before. A beat-up denim thing I didn't even care about that much, but it was an excuse to swing by. It was a Friday, the kind of humid summer night where the air feels like it's pressing down on you, thick and sticky. I pulled into their driveway, expecting an empty house, the windows dark. But the porch light was on, glowing soft and yellow, and there was Claire, standing in the doorway, her hair loose, falling over her shoulders in waves. She was wearing this faded blue dress, simple but soft, like it had been worn 1,000 times and still fit her perfectly. It made her look younger, softer, like she was someone I hadn't met before. She waved me over, casual at first, like it was no big deal. "Hey, stranger," she said, her voice warm but with this edge I couldn't place, like she was holding something back. "You here for that jacket?" I nodded, fumbling my words like an idiot, my voice catching in my throat. She stepped aside, holding the door open, and that's when she said it. "You don't have to rush off. I could use the company tonight." It wasn't flirty, not exactly. It was vulnerable. Like she meant it, like she'd been alone in that house too long and was reaching for something, someone, to fill the silence. My throat went dry. I should have laughed it off, grabbed my stuff, and left. I should have said, "Nah, I gotta go," and walked away. But her eyes locked on mine, dark and steady, and I felt this pull, like the world was shrinking, narrowing to just the two of us standing in that doorway. My feet moved before my brain could catch up, and I stepped inside. The house felt different without Ethan. Too quiet, too intimate, like it was holding secrets it didn't want to share. The living room smelled like lavender and old books, a familiar scent that usually felt comforting but now felt heavy. The TV was on low, some black and white movie flickering in the background, the kind of thing Claire always had playing when she was home alone. She gestured to the couch, her movements easy but careful, like she was measuring every step, every word. "You want a drink?" she asked, already heading to the kitchen. "Just water, unless you're feeling wild." She laughed, but it was nervous, a little shaky, and that's when I started to feel it, a low hum of unease mixed with something I didn't want to admit. Something warm, something dangerous. This wasn't just about a jacket anymore. I sat down, my hands clasped tight to keep them from shaking, and waited for her to come back, wondering what the hell I'd just walked into. Claire came back with 2 glasses of water, setting one in front of me on the coffee table. She didn't sit on the other couch, like I expected. Instead, she perched on the edge of the coffee table, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something soft, like vanilla and rain, that made my head spin. "So," she said, her voice quieter now, like we were sharing a secret. "How's life treating you? You seem different this summer." Her eyes were searching, like she was trying to figure me out, peeling back layers I didn't even know I had. I mumbled something about work, college, the usual stuff, but my voice sounded wrong, too loud in the quiet room, like it didn't belong there. She leaned forward, just a little, and I felt my pulse kick up, a steady thump in my chest. "You don't have to be so nervous," she said, half smiling, her lips curling in a way that made my stomach twist. "It's just me." But it wasn't just her. It was Claire, Ethan's mom, the woman who'd bandaged my knee when I was 14 after a bad skateboarding wipeout, who'd driven us to concerts and laughed at our dumb jokes, who'd always been this safe, untouchable figure in my life. Now she was looking at me like I wasn't just her son's friend. Like I was someone else entirely, someone she was seeing for the first time. I tried to laugh, to break the tension, but it came out wrong, more like a cough. "I should probably get going," I said, but my body didn't move, like my legs had forgotten how to work. She tilted her head, her hair falling over one shoulder, catching the light from the TV. "You sure?" she asked, her voice soft, almost teasing, but with that same vulnerable edge that made my chest ache. "It's nice having someone here. Gets lonely sometimes." That last word hit me like a punch, her voice cracking just enough to let the weight of it slip through. Lonely. Claire, who always seemed so together, so strong, was lonely. And I was here in her house, with no one else around, the night stretching out in front of us like a road with no signs. The air felt thicker now, like we were both holding our breath, waiting for something to happen. She started talking, really talking, about how quiet the house had been since Ethan started spending more time away, how she missed the chaos of having us around, the sound of our laughter filling the rooms. But it wasn't just small talk. There was this undercurrent, this unspoken thing weaving through her words. She'd pause, look at me, and I'd feel it, that pull again, stronger now, like a current dragging me under. I wanted to say something, anything, to keep things normal, to keep this from spiraling into something I couldn't control. But my mind was racing, a mess of questions I didn't want to answer. Was she just being friendly? Was I reading this wrong? Or was there something more, something I wasn't supposed to want but did? Then she did something that made my heart stop. She reached out, her fingers brushing my wrist, light as a feather but enough to send a jolt through my entire body, like I'd touched a live wire. "You're a good kid," she said, but her voice was too soft, too intimate, like she was saying something else entirely. "You always were. But you're not a kid anymore, are you?" I froze. My mouth went dry, and I couldn't look away from her. Her hand lingered there, just for a second, before she pulled back, like she'd caught herself, like she knew she'd crossed the line. But it was too late. That touch, that moment, it changed everything. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, like we were trapped in a space where the rules didn't apply anymore. I don't know how long we sat there, the silence stretching out, heavy with things we weren't saying. The TV flickered, casting shadows across her face, and I noticed the lines around her eyes, the way they made her look both fragile and strong, like she'd lived 1,000 lives in one. I wanted to ask her what she meant, why she'd said that, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was tight, my thoughts a tangled mess. Instead, I said something stupid like, "Ethan's lucky to have you." It was a deflection, a desperate attempt to pull us back to safety, to remind myself who she was, who I was. But she didn't take the bait. She just looked at me, her eyes dark and unreadable, and said, "I'm not sure he'd agree tonight." That's when the guilt hit, sharp and cold, like a knife in my chest. Ethan. My best friend. The guy who'd been there through every breakup, every fight with my parents, every stupid decision I'd ever made. The guy who trusted me, who'd let me into his home, his family. What was I doing here? What was she doing? My hand started to shake, and I stood up, too fast, my knee knocking over the glass of water on the table. It spilled across the wood, pooling around the coasters, and Claire jumped up, grabbing a towel from the kitchen. "I'm sorry," I said over and over, like it was my fault, like I could apologize for the mess in my head. She just laughed, soft and sad, and said, "It's just water. Don't worry about it." But we both knew it wasn't about the water. It was about the space between us, the line we were towing, the thing neither of us was brave enough, or reckless enough, to name. I should have left then. I should have grabbed my jacket and bolted for the door, put as much distance as I could between me and that moment. But I didn't. I helped her clean up, our hands brushing as we mopped up the spill, and every touch felt like a question I didn't know how to answer. She didn't say anything else, not directly, but the way she moved, the way she looked at me, it was like she was waiting for me to decide something. To stay or go. To cross a line or stay safe. And I was terrified because part of me, a part one didn't want to admit existed, wanted to stay. Wanted to lean into that pull, to see where it would take us, even if it meant betraying everything I cared about. The spill was cleaned up, but the tension didn't go away. It hung in the air, thick and heavy, like a storm waiting to break. We sat back down, this time on the same couch, a careful distance between us, but it didn't feel careful anymore. Claire tucked her legs under her, sipping her water like nothing had happened, but her hands were shaking just enough for me to notice. She started talking again, about her life before Ethan, before his dad left, stories I'd never heard in all the years I'd known her. She talked about how she'd wanted to be an artist, how she'd spent her 20s sketching in coffee shops, dreaming of galleries and open roads. How she'd given it all up to raise a family, to be the mom Ethan needed after his dad walked out. Her voice was steady, but there was this rawness to it, like she was peeling back layers she usually kept hidden, letting me see the woman behind the mom. I listened, really listened, and it hit me like a freight train how little I actually knew her. She wasn't just Ethan's mom, she was Claire, a woman who'd had dreams, who'd lost things, who'd sacrificed pieces of herself to keep her son's world steady. And now she was sitting here with me, sharing these pieces of herself, and I wasn't sure I deserved to hear them. The more she talked, the more I felt it, this connection, this pull that wasn't just attraction but something deeper, something that scared the hell out of me. I wanted to know her, not just as my friend's mom but as her. I wanted to ask about her sketches, her dreams, the life she'd left behind. And that wanting felt like a betrayal, like I was stealing something that didn't belong to me. I started talking too, more than I meant to, the words spilling out like they'd been waiting for a chance to escape. I told her about how lost I felt, how college seemed like this big, empty thing waiting to swallow me whole. How I didn't know who I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to want. I told her about the pressure, my parents, my friends, the weight of expectations I couldn't meet. She listened, her eyes locked on mine, and it felt like she was seeing me, really seeing me, in a way no one else ever had. "You're figuring it out," she said, her voice soft but sure, like she believed it even if I didn't. "You're allowed to not have all the answers yet." It was such a simple thing, but it hit me hard, like she'd reached into my chest and steadied something that had been shaking for years. The conversation shifted, and I don't know how we got there, but suddenly she was asking about my dating life, teasing at first, her smile playful but with this edge, like she was testing the waters. "You must have girls lining up," she said, her voice light but her eyes sharp, watching me too closely. I laughed it off, said I wasn't good at relationships, that I always messed things up. But she didn't let it go. "You're too hard on yourself," she said, leaning closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of green in her eyes. "Someone's gonna see how special you are." Her words hung there, heavy, and I felt my face burn, my heart racing like it was trying to break free. Was she just being kind? Was she just playing the supportive mom role? Or was there something more, something I was too scared to name? I couldn't tell, and that uncertainty was driving me crazy, making my thoughts spiral into places they shouldn't go. The night wore on, and the space between us kept shrinking, not physically, but emotionally. Every word, every glance felt like it was pulling us closer to something dangerous, something we couldn't take back. She told me about a time she'd almost left town, just packed a bag and disappeared, chasing a life she'd never had. But she stayed for Ethan, for the life she'd built, even if it wasn't the one she dreamed of. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, like she was scared to say it out loud. "If I'd been brave enough to go." I wanted to tell her she was brave, that she was stronger than she thought, that she'd built something beautiful even if it hurt. But instead I said, "I think you're brave every day." It was cheesy, clumsy, but it was true, and the way she looked at me, like she believed me, like my words mattered, made my chest ache in a way I didn't understand. Then it happened again. Her hand brushed mine, but this time she didn't pull away. Her fingers stayed there, warm against my skin, and I didn't move either. The silence was deafening, the kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat, loud and unsteady. I wanted to say something, to break the spell, but I couldn't. I was caught, trapped in this moment where everything felt possible and impossible at the same time. Her eyes were on mine, soft but intense, like she was searching for something, waiting for something. "You don't have to go," she said again, her voice so soft I almost missed it, and I knew, right then, that we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't come back from. The world outside faded away, the hum of the TV, the distant buzz of cicadas, it all disappeared, and it was just us, her hand on mine, the air thick with things we weren't saying. I don't know how long we sat like that, seconds or minutes, but it felt like forever, like time had stopped just to let us linger in this moment. My mind was screaming at me to move, to leave, to do anything to break this spell, but my body wouldn't listen. I wanted to stay, and that wanting terrified me. I thought of Ethan, of the years we'd spent together, of the trust we'd built. I thought of Claire, of the life she'd lived, the sacrifices she'd made. And I thought of myself, of the kid I used to be and the man I wasn't sure I could become. Then the phone rang, shrill and jarring, cutting through the silence like a knife. We both jumped, her hand pulling away, the spell breaking. It was Ethan, checking in, his voice loud and cheerful through the speaker. Claire answered, her tone shifting back to normal, like she'd flipped a switch, back to being Ethan's mom, warm and steady. But I could see it in her eyes, the way they flicked to me and then away, like she was trying to hold herself together. Ethan asked if I was there, probably just making conversation, and I lied, my voice tight as I shouted from the couch. Nah, I already left. Claire didn't correct me. She just looked at me, her eyes full of something I couldn't read, guilt, maybe, or regret, or something else entirely, something that made my stomach twist. She hung up, and the silence came back, but it wasn't the same. It was heavier now, laced with the weight of what had almost happened. I stood up, my legs unsteady, and grabbed my jacket from the arm of the couch. I should go, I said, and this time I meant it. Claire nodded, her expression soft but guarded, like she was rebuilding walls that had started to crumble. Take care of yourself, okay? She said, her voice steady but quiet, like she was saying goodbye to more than just me. I nodded, unable to look back, because if I did, I might have stayed. And staying would have changed everything. I walked out into the humid night, the air still thick, the cicadas louder now, like they were screaming at me for what I'd almost done. The porch light flickered as I climbed into my car, and I didn't look back at the house, at her. I couldn't. I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel too tight, my mind replaying every moment, every word, every touch. The next time I saw Claire, Ethan was there, and it was like nothing had happened. She was back to being Claire, Ethan's mom, all warmth and normalcy, laughing at his jokes, asking about our plans. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the way she avoided looking at me too long, the way her smile tightened just a fraction when I spoke. We never talked about that night. Not once. But it lived between us, a secret we both carried, heavy and unspoken, like a weight we'd never put down. I don't know if she felt what I felt, or if I'd imagined it all, built it up in my head because I was young and lost and desperate for something real, something to make me feel alive. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and my thoughts are loud, I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd been brave enough, or reckless enough, to cross that line. Would it have been a mistake? A moment? Or something else entirely, something neither of us was ready for? That summer changed me, not because anything happened, but because it could have. And that possibility, that almost, is what haunts me. It's what makes me question who I am, what I'm capable of, what I'd do if I ever stood on that edge again. Because the truth is, I wanted to stay. I wanted to lean into that pull, to see where it would take me, even if it meant betraying my best friend, even if it meant breaking everything I thought I knew about myself. And I hate myself for it, for wanting something I shouldn't, for feeling something I can't take back. Have you ever had a moment like that? A moment where you stood on the edge of something forbidden, something you knew was wrong but felt so right you couldn't walk away. A moment where you felt the pull, the ache, the fear, and the thrill all at once. Drop it in the comments. I want to hear your story, because I know I'm not the only one who's been there. And if this hit you as hard as it hit me, if it made your heart race or your chest ache, hit that subscribe button. There's more where this came from, stories that dig into the messy, complicated, beautiful parts of being human, the parts we don't always talk about but can't stop thinking about. Thanks for listening, for sitting with me through this. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll dive into another story that just might keep you up at night.